Hey y'all, Tom, ND3N here, and thanks for dropping into my Radio Shack for a Ham Shack chat. This time, we're going to be looking at different ways that your power can be defined. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, observations, or just a remark or two, please add them to the comments.
Any questions, comments, snide remarks? No? Good.
PEP, or peak envelope power, is measured at the output of your final amplifier. For most of us, this is at the antenna connection on our radio. But if a linear amplifier is used, it will be measured at the output of that amp. The FCC definition is that PEP is normally considered the occasionally or continuously repeating crest of the modulation envelope under normal operating conditions. Now, the FCC uses peak envelope power to set maximum power standards for radio transmitters.
There was you and me. There were no variables, no math.
PEP is equal to the steady carrier power in a properly formed CW transmission and is also equal to the average power in a steady FM, FSK, or RTTY transmission. Although average power is the same as PEP for complex modulation forms, the peak envelope power bears no particular ratio or mathematical relationship to longer-term average power in distorted envelopes such as single sideband voice transmissions. The typical average power of an SSB voice transmission is 10 to 20% of PEP. The percentage of longer-term average power to PEP increases with speech processing and can reach around 50% with extreme speech processing. Most modern amateur transceivers sample PEP to adjust power using an ALC, or automatic level control system. Time delay in the ALC and finite times of RF signals passing through the multiple stages, in particular narrowband filters, often give rise to unusual envelope distortion.
It's very unusual.
This is usually not a problem with modern transceivers with DSPs, so it's probably something you don't need to worry too much about, but keep it in the back of your mind just in case. If you're enjoying this so far, please take a moment and pop that thumbs up icon to give me a like.
You like me. You really like me.
At this point, I was going to discuss effective radiated power, or ERP. However, I'm going to take a little detour and talk about a nearly synonymous term, effective isotropic radiated power, or EIRP. The critical part of this term is the word isotropic. An isotropic radiator is a mathematical construct of a non-existent theoretical antenna that radiates in all directions equally, forming a perfect sphere of RF energy.
Perfect, perfect, and perfect.
EIRP has two components. The first being the output power of your transmitter, the PEP that we've just finished discussing, and the second is the gain of a given antenna over the mythical isotropic radiator, or as I like to refer to it as, the unicorn antenna.
Unicorn, Old French, unicorn.
This gain is expressed using the term dBi. For more information on decibel measurements, this was one of my first videos, but it does a pretty good job of explaining the math. Most antenna manufacturers in their specifications will use dBi to state their antenna's gain. The obvious question is, why use the gain over our unicorn antenna when they could express the gain as compared to a real antenna, such as a dipole, which then would be stated as dBd?
Seems so darn dishonest.
I'd like to give them more credit than I believe they are due and tell you that the engineers, being scientists, wanted to use the most scientific term they could. But I suspect it was more the marketing department, as they wanted to give the impression that their antenna was actually 2.15 dB higher than if they expressed themselves referencing a dipole antenna. All that said, referencing an isotropic radiator or a dipole are both perfectly acceptable, which brings us to our next term. Please help me spread the word about this and other videos of mine by sharing.
Let me share some research
With your friends and compatriots in the ham radio community, especially on social media. Effective radiated power, or ERP, is virtually identical to EIRP. To convert from one to the other, you simply subtract 2.15 dB from ERP to come up with your ERP, or conversely, you add that 2.15 decibels to ERP to give you your effective isotropic radiated power. On spec sheets, if they're using ERP, the term used is dBd because it compares a given antenna's gain to the gain of a half-wave dipole antenna. I know that drudging through the math can be boring, so I've tried to minimize that math and give you just the end results. Feel free to fact check me, especially as I'm not a mathematician and barely squeaked by my college calculus classes. Hi. Nevertheless, I hope you've learned something and at least gained an appreciation for PEP, EIRP, and ERP. 73 until our next Hey Y'all. Thanks again for dropping in for a Ham Shack chat. I'm Tom, ND3N, and I am out.
It was like pulling teeth.